The bustling city street, usually a symphony of distant sirens and chattering crowds, fell into a sudden, jarring silence. One moment, Mark was just another tourist, camera in hand, admiring the architectural grandeur of the old courthouse building. The next, a powerful police K9, its muscles coiled and taut, had lunged with unnerving speed, snapping its jaws inches from his face, aggressively tearing at the fabric of his backpack. Before Mark could even fully process the blur of fur and teeth, the calm afternoon shattered. Uniformed officers, their faces grim and alert, already had their hands moving towards their holstered weapons, eyes fixed not on the agitated dog, but intensely, suspiciously, on him. The casual encounter had just violently spiraled into a confrontation that would redefine his understanding of a simple vacation. Meet Mark, an American tourist in his late 20s, whose wanderlust was as insatiable as his curiosity. He wasn't your typical resort hopper. Mark thrived on solo adventures, seeking out the hidden narratives in every city he visited, always with his trusty camera slung over his shoulder, ready to immortalize life's fleeting, unique moments. For him, travel wasn't just about seeing new places. It was about experiencing them, about capturing the untold stories that unfolded in the everyday. This particular journey had brought him to a vibrant, historic city within the United States, a place he'd always wanted to explore. He loved the juxtaposition of old-world charm and modern dynamism, perfect fodder for his photographic passion. His backpack, a worn but reliable companion, was filled with the essentials of any seasoned traveler. Camera gear, a well-thumbed paperback, a portable charger, and a few snacks. Innocuous items for an innocent man. He had spent the morning wandering through charming alleyways, capturing the play of light on centuries-old brickwork, and had just reached the main square. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the plaza as Mark paused, his gaze drawn to the majestic courthouse, its neoclassical facade gleaming. He raised his camera, framing the shot, when he noticed them. A pair of K9 units, officers walking their impressive German shepherds with an air of practiced vigilance. They moved with a purpose, patrolling the perimeter of the square, their presence a subtle reminder of the city's undercurrents, even in such a picturesque setting. Mark, ever respectful of law enforcement, made sure to keep a considerable distance, not wanting to interfere with their duties. He lowered his camera slightly, not wanting to appear intrusive, but still eager to capture the powerful image of the K9s on patrol, a testament to the city's security. He clicked the shutter, a quick, almost silent whisper in the expansive square. It was just a fleeting moment, a candid shot from a respectful distance. He even considered asking permission, but decided against it, not wanting to interrupt their serious work. He began to lower his camera for good, turning to move on when it happened. In a terrifying flash of movement, one of the police dogs, seemingly unprovoked, broke its steady pace. Its handler, a towering figure whose attention had been momentarily elsewhere, was caught off guard. The powerful animal lunged, a sudden guttural growl escaping its throat, its dark eyes fixed not on Mark, but on the unsuspecting backpack slung loosely over his shoulder. The dog's jaws chomped shut, a violent tearing snap that ripped through the relative quiet of the square, its teeth sinking into the worn fabric. Mark froze, a cold dread washing over him. The world seemed to slow, every sound amplified, the sharp rip of fabric, the strained grunts of the handler struggling to regain control, the sudden sharp clicks of safety catches as other officers present reacted instantly. Their hands were on their guns, their faces grim, and those weapons, moments ago merely passive tools, were now menacingly poised. Mark, still reeling from the dog's unexpected aggression, felt the weight of their collective suspicion descend upon him. This wasn't just an accident. This felt like an accusation. Now, before we delve deeper into the unfolding chaos, the fear and the baffling mystery of why a police dog would target an innocent tourist's backpack, remember to like this video. Your support helps us bring you more gripping, real-life stories from around the world. And don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell, so you won't miss a single part of Mark's incredible ordeal. The dog's sudden, aggressive lunge shattered the peaceful afternoon, sending a shockwave through the calm plaza. Mark, still reeling from the unexpected assault on his backpack, stumbled backward, his camera clattering against his chest. He hadn't felt the dog's teeth, but the sheer force of its snap, accompanied by a guttural growl, was enough to churn his stomach. The air crackled with tension, completely transforming the serene atmosphere he had been enjoying just moments before. Mark instinctively checked his backpack, ensuring the expensive lens he'd just purchased was still secure, a wave of confusion washing over him. He was unharmed, but the unsettling incident left him disoriented, his mind racing to comprehend what had just unfolded. What in the world had provoked such a reaction? Before he could fully process the bizarre event, a stern voice cut through the sudden silence. "What do you have in there, pal?" The K9 handler, a burly man with a closely shaven head and eyes that pierced through Mark, stood rigidly beside his agitated canine. Officer Davis, as his name tag clearly indicated, exuded an aura of unyielding authority, his stance radiating suspicion. His hand rested firmly on the dog's harness, keeping the powerful animal from another lunge. Yet the K9 continued to eye Mark's backpack with an unnerving intensity, its low growl a constant, menacing rumble. Officer Davis's jaw was clenched, his expression a mask of distrust, as if Mark had just committed a heinous crime. He seemed to leap to conclusions, seeing the dog's reaction as undeniable proof of something illicit, something hidden and dangerous. The initial surprise gave way to a burgeoning sense of unease within Mark. Mark raised his hands in a placating gesture, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through him. "Whoa, officer. Calm down. I'm just a tourist. I don't understand what happened." He gestured to his Hawaiian shirt and the large camera hanging around his neck, trying to project an image of harmlessness. "This is just my travel backpack. There's nothing unusual inside, I promise." He tried to offer a reassuring smile, which felt strained and probably looked unconvincing under the officer's intense scrutiny. Officer Davis remained unmoved, his gaze unwavering, fixed on Mark's backpack as if it held the secrets to the universe. "Dogs don't lie, buddy. This dog smells something. Now, what is it?" His voice was low, laced with an ominous warning that sent a shiver down Mark's spine. The implication was clear. The dog's instincts were infallible, and Mark was inadvertently implicated. "Really, it's nothing suspicious," Mark insisted, searching for his wallet to retrieve his ID. "Just my camera gear, a laptop, some snacks, a water bottle. All the usual tourist stuff." He carefully unclipped the smaller front pocket of his backpack, pulling out his passport and a few crumpled foreign bills. "See? I'm from out of town, just visiting. I was just taking some pictures of the old courthouse." He pointed vaguely towards the historic building in the distance, hoping to redirect the officer's attention, to diffuse the palpable tension that hung heavy in the air. He then made a move to take off his backpack, offering to open it for inspection. "I can open it right now. You can look inside. I have nothing to hide." He hoped his transparency would assuage the officer's suspicions, that a quick glance inside would reveal the mundane contents and swiftly resolve this increasingly uncomfortable situation. He just wanted to continue his sightseeing, to leave this bizarre encounter behind him. The thought of his itinerary, still packed with exciting landmarks to visit, flashed through his mind, abruptly overshadowed by the escalating confrontation. Officer Davis, his jaw clenched, simply shook his head, a gesture that conveyed an absolute refusal of Mark's reasonable offer. The handler's eyes, narrowed and intense, fixed on Mark's backpack with an almost predatory gaze. "Step away from the bag, sir, and keep your hands where I can see them," he commanded, his voice tight with an authority that brooked no argument. There was an icy finality to his tone, sealing Mark's fate in that moment. Before Mark could articulate another word, before he could reiterate his innocence or question the officer's decision, Davis had already pulled out his radio. "Backup requested. Suspicious activity at the landmark. K9 engagement," he barked into the device, his eyes never leaving Mark. Mark felt a cold dread begin to creep up his spine. The situation was escalating far beyond a simple misunderstanding, morphing into something far more sinister. His heart hammered against his ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the growing unease. He watched, almost in slow motion, as other uniformed officers began converging on their location. Their squad cars, sirens silent but lights flashing in the periphery, created an unsettling tableau that drew curious glances from the few bystanders still lingering. Soon, Mark was surrounded, a circle of stern faces and gleaming badges enclosing him. Each new arrival amplified the suffocating pressure, every glance an accusation. He felt like a caged animal, every escape route seemingly blocked. The sheer number of officers was intimidating, their collective presence a palpable force. The K9, a powerful German shepherd, remained agitated, its low, guttural growls a constant, unsettling counterpoint to the tense silence. It continued to strain against its leash, its powerful body vibrating with an almost primal instinct, its focus unwavering from Mark's backpack. Each snarl, each focused lunge towards the bag, served only to deepen the officer's suspicion. To them, the dog's consistent reaction was undeniable proof that something illicit lay within. Mark felt their judgment weigh heavily, a silent verdict passed without a single piece of evidence beyond the dog's trained response. He wanted to shout, to explain, to make them see the absurdity of the situation, but his throat felt constricted, words trapped beneath a wave of rising panic. Internally, Mark's mind raced, a maelstrom of conflicting emotions. Fear gnawed at him, fear of the unknown, of false accusations, of bureaucratic entanglement in a foreign city. Confusion swirled, a dizzying mix of disbelief that his casual tourist outing had devolved into such a nightmare. But perhaps most potent was the burning frustration. He was an innocent tourist, minding his own business, merely attempting to capture a beautiful moment. Now he was being treated like a hardened criminal, subjected to suspicion and intimidation, purely because a dog had reacted to his bag. He desperately wanted to assert his rights, to demand a lawyer, to remind them he was an American citizen and knew his civil liberties. Yet, a more pragmatic, terrifying thought held him back. He was outnumbered, surrounded, and deeply unfamiliar with the local legal processes. What if asserting himself only made things worse? What if it was misinterpreted as defiance, further fueling their suspicion and leading to even harsher consequences? The thought of aggravating the already volatile situation paralyzed him, forcing him to comply, despite the churning injustice he felt deep within his gut. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating, punctuated only by the dog's persistent growls, as Mark stood, a bewildered spectator in his own unfolding nightmare. Officer Davis, his face a mask of grim determination, finally gave the order. "Search him, and the bag, carefully." The words cut through the tense silence, sending a jolt through Mark. Two officers, grim-faced and efficient, stepped forward. One began a systematic pat-down of Mark himself, their movements precise and impersonal. Mark stood rigid, his arms outspread, feeling utterly exposed and vulnerable under their practiced hands. The other officer approached Mark's backpack, which still lay on the ground, the K-9 unit still intensely focused on it, its growls now a low, rumbling vibration in the air. With measured movements, the officer unzipped the main compartment of the backpack. Mark watched, his breath caught in his throat, as they began to meticulously go through his belongings. First came his camera, a high-end DSLR, its expensive lens glinting in the afternoon sun. The officer examined it briefly, then placed it carefully on the ground beside the bag. Next, his travel guide, dog-eared and filled with scribbled notes, was fanned open before being set aside. A small toiletries bag, a portable charger, a spare t-shirt. Each item was removed, inspected, and then placed down. The process was slow, deliberate, each item an ordinary, mundane object that yielded no secrets. Mark felt a tiny flicker of hope ignite within him. They were finding nothing, just as he knew they would. Perhaps this nightmare would finally end. Officer Davis watched the search with unblinking intensity, his skepticism etched across his features. The K-9 handler continued to hold his agitated dog, occasionally offering a calming word, but the dog's focus on the bag remained absolute. It was this unwavering canine conviction that prevented Davis from relaxing his guard. The search continued, deeper into the backpack's various pockets and compartments. The officer's fingers probed the lining, searching for hidden pockets or false bottoms. Mark's initial relief began to wane as the search dragged on, replaced by a renewed sense of anxiety. He knew his bag held nothing illicit, but the sheer thoroughness of the search was unnerving. Then, the officer's hand paused. His brow furrowed slightly as he felt something unusual, tucked deep within a less-used side pocket beneath a rolled-up rain jacket. It was small, no bigger than his palm, and wrapped tightly in a dark, almost iridescent fabric. The officer's eyes met Officer Davis's, a silent communication passing between them. The K-9, as if sensing the shift in discovery, let out a sharper bark, pulling harder against its leash, its excitement palpable. "What's this?" the officer asked, his voice low, pulling out the small, wrapped package. It was an irregular shape, not rectangular like a typical drug packet, nor metallic like a weapon. The fabric wrapping was unfamiliar, almost silk-like, and clearly not something Mark would normally carry. Mark stared at the object, utterly bewildered. His mind raced, scrambling to place it, to recall ever putting such an item in his bag. He had no memory of it whatsoever. I don't know," he stammered, his voice laced with genuine confusion. "That's not mine. I've never seen that before in my life." His heart began to pound anew, a frantic rhythm against his ribs. The flicker of hope he'd felt moments ago was extinguished, replaced by a cold wave of dread. Officer Davis stepped closer, his gaze fixed first on Mark, then on the peculiar package now held carefully in the officer's hand. His expression hardened into a cynical sneer. "Really? It just magically appeared in your bag, then?" His tone was dripping with disbelief, a clear indication that Mark's plea of ignorance was falling on deaf ears. The other officers, who had been observing the search, exchanged knowing glances. Their expressions were skeptical, their judgment now solidified. To them, Mark's denial was simply the predictable response of someone caught red-handed. Mark felt a wave of despair wash over him. He was genuinely confused, truly baffled by the discovery, yet he could see in their eyes that they already believed he was lying. He was in deeper trouble than ever. The officers, their faces grim and unyielding, began the methodical search of Mark's backpack. Each zipper pull, every flap opened, felt like an eternity. Mark watched, his breath caught in his throat, as they carefully removed his camera gear. A DSLR, several lenses, a drone, all laid out on the pavement. Then came his travel guide, a well-worn novel, a spare t-shirt, and a half-eaten bag of trail mix. Nothing criminal, nothing even remotely suspicious. A flicker of doubt seemed to cross the faces of some of the younger officers, a subtle shift in their rigid postures. But Officer Davis, ever vigilant, merely nodded, urging them to continue. "Deeper," he commanded, his voice low and firm. "K9s don't make mistakes." One officer, a tall woman with a no-nonsense expression, reached into a zippered compartment at the very bottom of the bag, a section Mark rarely used. Her fingers brushed against something hard, wrapped in a smooth, dark fabric. She pulled it out slowly, holding it up for Officer Davis to inspect. It was a small, oblong package, roughly the size of a deck of cards, meticulously wrapped in what appeared to be black velvet. The edges were neat, almost professionally folded, and it felt surprisingly heavy for its size. Its unusual presentation immediately intensified the tension that had momentarily ebbed. All eyes were on the mysterious object, a sudden, palpable silence descending upon the scene, broken only by the K9's continued low growl. Mark, too, stared at it, a knot tightening in his stomach. He had never seen it before in his life. "What is this, Mr. Thompson?" Officer Davis asked, his voice now laced with a dangerous edge, his suspicion reignited and burning brighter than before. His eyes bore into Mark's, searching for any telltale sign of deception. Mark swallowed hard, his throat dry. I have no idea, officer. That's not mine. I swear I've never seen that before." His words tumbled out, desperate and bewildered. He truly was dumbfounded. How could something so expertly concealed be in his bag? He racked his brain, trying to remember if anyone could have slipped it in, but no clear memory surfaced. Officer Davis ignored his protests, his gaze fixed on the velvet package. He nodded to the female officer, who carefully began to unwrap it, her movements slow and deliberate, as if diffusing a bomb. The layers of the soft fabric peeled away, revealing not drugs, not contraband, but something entirely unexpected. Gleaming softly under the afternoon sun, nestled in the velvet, was an antique locket. It was exquisite. Made of what looked like tarnished silver or white gold, it was intricately engraved with swirling patterns and delicate filigree. A small, dark gemstone, perhaps a sapphire or onyx, was set in its center, catching the light with a subtle sparkle. It wasn't just old, it felt ancient, imbued with a history that practically hummed in the air. The craftsmanship was undeniable, the kind found only in museum pieces or inherited heirlooms. The discovery caused a momentary, collective gasp among the officers. This was far from what any of them had anticipated. Their expressions shifted from stern suspicion to a mixture of surprise and confusion. The K9, however, remained agitated, its growls deepening, its attention still fixed on the locket, or perhaps the residual scent it carried. Officer Davis, though momentarily taken aback, quickly regained his composure. He picked up the locket, examining it closely, his brow furrowed. An antique, then, he murmured, more to himself than to Mark. Still doesn't explain how it got into your bag, or why my dog reacted to it. His gaze, though less accusatory, still held a strong current of doubt. He clearly wasn't ready to dismiss Mark's involvement just yet, suspecting a more elaborate deception. Mark stared at the locket, a strange sense of familiarity washing over him. The intricate design, the unique setting of the gemstone. Then it clicked. A jolt went through him, a sudden, vivid recall. "The museum," he breathed, the words barely a whisper. "I know that locket. I saw it just yesterday." His voice gained strength as the pieces began to align in his mind. He pointed at the delicate piece of jewelry, his eyes wide with a mixture of shock and dawning comprehension. It was in the recently recovered exhibit, featured prominently. It was part of a collection of items that had been stolen. The museum connection, a detail Mark had almost forgotten in the maelstrom, suddenly burst forth from his memory, a desperate beacon in the suffocating darkness of suspicion. He had seen that locket before, not simply observed it, but truly studied it, captivated by its delicate filigree and the poignant story accompanying its exhibit. "Wait, the museum," he blurted out, the words tumbling over each other in his haste, a fresh surge of adrenaline coursing through him. "I recognize that locket. I saw it just yesterday. It was in the recently recovered stolen artifacts exhibit at the City Museum. They had a special display, explaining how it was part of a larger collection taken years ago." Mark's voice, though still tinged with the lingering effects of panic, now carried a distinct note of conviction, fueled by the sudden clarity of this crucial recollection. He pointed vaguely in the direction of downtown, trying to provide context. The placard next to it described its history, its significance. I even took a picture of it with my phone. I can show you. The officers, who had been meticulously cataloging the contents of his backpack, paused. Their movements, initially clinical and detached, became infinitesimally slower, a slight shift in their collective demeanor. Officer Davis, though his expression remained hard, tilted his head almost imperceptibly, his intense gaze still fixed on Mark, but now with a flicker of something new, a nascent curiosity, perhaps even a hint of doubt regarding his initial certainty. The K9, still restrained but noticeably less agitated, let out a soft whine, its ears swiveling, almost as if sensing the subtle change in the human dynamics around it. "The City Museum, you say?" Officer Davis's voice was low, devoid of its previous aggressive edge, yet still commanding. He picked up the locket again, turning it over in his gloved hand, examining the intricate details with a renewed, more analytical eye. The unexpected mention of a museum, especially one dealing with stolen artifacts, injected a completely new variable into the equation. It was a narrative thread entirely inconsistent with their initial assessment of Mark as a likely courier or perpetrator. The abrupt shift in the perceived context of the item was disorienting, even for seasoned officers. Mark, seizing the slight opening, pressed on, his words gaining a more confident cadence. "Yes, the City Museum. It was a new exhibit, really well put together. They had several items, but that locket stood out. It was described as a family heirloom, stolen from a private collection years ago, and only recently recovered. They even had a picture of the original owner." He was rambling slightly, details coming to him in flashes, but each piece of information, however fragmented, seemed to chip away at the wall of suspicion surrounding him. The fact that he could recall such specific details lent credibility to his rather extraordinary claim. Officer Davis maintained eye contact with Mark for a long moment, visibly weighing the plausibility of his statement. His experience told him that criminals rarely offered such precise, verifiable information. He then turned to one of the junior officers. "Radio dispatch," he commanded, his voice returning to its default authoritative tone. "Verify a report from the City Museum regarding a recently stolen locket. Ask about an exhibit of recovered artifacts, specifically one described as a family heirloom. Get confirmation if it matches this description." He handed the locket to the junior officer, who carefully bagged it as evidence before moving to his radio. As the officer began relaying the information, a palpable shift occurred in the tense atmosphere. The suffocating weight of suspicion began to lift, replaced by a cautious, almost expectant silence. The other officers, who had been holding their positions, subtly relaxed their stances. Their hardened expressions softened marginally, their collective gazes now tinged with a mix of intrigue and professional skepticism, rather than outright condemnation. Mark took a deep, shaky breath, the first truly deep breath he'd taken in what felt like an eternity. A glimmer of hope, fragile yet fiercely persistent, began to penetrate the despair that had enshrouded him. He wasn't entirely vindicated yet, but this was a crucial step, a lifeline he had desperately needed. The ordeal was far from over, but for the first time since the dog had snapped, he felt a faint stirring of optimism that the truth might actually prevail. He watched the junior officer, waiting for the crackle of the radio, his future hanging on the words that would soon emerge from the static. The wait felt excruciatingly long, each second stretching into an eternity as the junior officer spoke into the radio, his words precise and clipped, relaying their request. Mark's heart hammered against his ribs, a frantic drumbeat of anxiety and anticipation. He watched the officers, trying to gauge their thoughts, but their faces remained largely unreadable, a blend of professional detachment and lingering suspicion. The K-9, having settled down slightly but still occasionally glancing at Mark's backpack, lay at Officer Davis's feet, a silent, furry testament to the initial alarm. Then, the radio crackled to life again, a tinny voice filtering through the air. Everyone leaned in slightly, their collective attention focused on the small device. "Officer Davis, dispatch here. We have confirmation. The City Museum reported a significant theft 2 days ago. A valuable antique locket, matching the description you provided, a family heirloom from their recovered artifacts exhibit. It was listed as missing after a private viewing event. Surveillance footage is still being reviewed, but initial reports suggest a sophisticated operation." The voice on the radio was clear, concise, and utterly definitive. A ripple went through the officers. The pieces of the puzzle, which had been scattered and confusing, suddenly began to snap into place with an undeniable click. Mark wasn't a criminal. He was an unwitting pawn. Officer Davis's expression transformed, the hard lines of suspicion softening into a look of dawning comprehension, followed swiftly by a flash of regret. He exchanged a significant glance with his colleagues, a silent acknowledgement of their collective misjudgment. The atmosphere shifted palpably, the air no longer thick with accusation, but with a new, startling realization. "Sophisticated operation," Officer Davis murmured, almost to himself, his gaze now fixed on Mark with a completely different intensity. "That explains it." He turned to Mark, his voice now laced with a genuine tone of apology. "Sir, it appears you've been caught in the middle of something much larger than we initially thought." Dispatch confirmed the locket was indeed stolen from the museum. Then came the full, shocking twist. As dispatch continued to relay information, A new detail emerged that sent a cold shiver down Mark's spine. Further intel suggests the theft occurred during a crowded street festival earlier that day, not directly from the museum. A known pickpocket, who has evaded capture multiple times, was spotted in the vicinity of the museum's delivery entrance a short time after the locket was reported missing from an off-site display. He was last seen fleeing the area in a panic, pursued by plainclothes officers, right before he disappeared into the general public. The implications hit Mark with the force of a physical blow. The crowded street festival, the slight bump he'd felt, the hurried apology from a stranger. It all made sickening sense now. The pickpocket, realizing he was being pursued, had undoubtedly used Mark's backpack as a temporary, unassuming hiding place, an unwitting mule to evade immediate capture. Mark had been the perfect anonymous target, a tourist, distracted, with a conveniently accessible bag. The dog's persistent interest, initially a source of terror, had been its trained response to an item that didn't belong, an anomaly. The officers exchanged knowing glances, a silent confirmation of the grim reality. Mark was not the perpetrator. He was merely a victim of extreme bad luck and circumstance. The harsh, accusatory stares that had been fixed on him for what felt like hours melted away, replaced by expressions of genuine understanding and even sympathy. Officer Davis approached Mark, his hand reaching out, not for handcuffs but in a gesture of empathy. The turning point had arrived. The nightmare was finally unraveling. The crackle of the police radio cut through the tense silence, dispatch confirming the museum's report. The locket, indeed, had been stolen just 3 days prior from a private collection, recently recovered, and then restolen from the museum exhibit itself. The specific details Mark had provided, down to its description as a family heirloom, matched perfectly. The pieces of the bewildering puzzle clicked into place, not just for the officers but for Mark as well, as a chilling realization dawned upon him. Officer Davis lowered his radio, his gaze now completely transformed. The suspicion had vanished, replaced by a profound understanding and even a touch of sheepishness. He motioned to the other officers, who holstered their weapons with a collective sigh of relief. "Mark," he began, his voice surprisingly gentle. "It seems there's been a significant misunderstanding. Dispatch has confirmed everything you said about the locket and the museum. We believe we know what happened." He explained that surveillance footage from the museum, reviewed only hours before, showed a known, agile pickpocket lingering near the exhibit. This same individual was later seen in the area where Mark had been exploring, just moments before the K9 unit arrived. The pickpocket, realizing he was being pursued or perhaps sensing the presence of the police dogs, must have identified Mark as an unsuspecting target. In a desperate split-second decision, the thief had likely bumped into Mark, deftly slipping the locket into his open backpack, using him as an unwitting mule to evade capture. The K9 unit's trained nose, detecting the recent human scent on the locket, would have reacted forcefully, leading to the dramatic confrontation. The weight of the past hour, the fear, the confusion, and the humiliation began to lift from Mark. He wasn't a suspect. He was a victim of circumstance, an innocent bystander caught in a criminal's desperate ploy. The officers, their demeanor now entirely apologetic, expressed their regret for the ordeal. "We are truly sorry for the distress this has caused, Mark," Officer Davis stated, offering a genuine, if weary, smile. "These dogs are trained for specific scents, and sometimes their accuracy, while ultimately beneficial, can lead to complicated situations. You handled yourself remarkably well, especially under such pressure." Mark, still processing the bizarre turn of events, could only nod. The locket, now carefully documented and bagged as evidence, was destined to be returned to the museum, its journey far more eventful than anyone could have predicted. He watched as the officers, no longer seeing him as a potential criminal, secured the scene and began to disperse, their professional routine resuming. Left alone, the initial adrenaline faded, leaving Mark feeling utterly drained, yet strangely invigorated. He slumped onto a nearby bench, the city sounds slowly re-entering his consciousness. The chaotic, terrifying interaction with the police dog, which had initially been the stuff of nightmares, now seemed like a pivotal, albeit harrowing, twist in his travel story. He realized the K9's actions, though terrifying in the moment, were ultimately for the good. The dog had done its job, leading to the recovery of stolen property and inadvertently exposing a crime. He had been an unwilling participant in a thrilling, real-life drama, a scenario far beyond anything he could have engineered with his camera. This trip, intended for quiet exploration and photography, had given him an unforgettable experience, a story he would undoubtedly recount for years to come. A tale of mistaken identity, a police dog's keen instincts, and a valuable locket. He left the scene not with anger, but with a newfound, profound respect for the complexities of law enforcement and the remarkable capabilities of their K9 partners. If you found this story captivating, hit that subscribe button for more real-life dramas, and check out our next video where we explore another unexpected turn of events.